that are involved in it. We just thank you for them. Thank you for everyone that is here tonight. Keep us safe as we travel home. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Lori, roll call, please.
Chair Copley?
Here.
Vice Chair Fryer?
Here.
Chief Griffiths?
Here, thank you.
Mr. Dejanay?
Here.
Mr. Ludwig?
Here.
Mr. Van Zant?
He contacted me earlier and said he had a pressing family matter he had to tend to. He couldn't be here. Family, everybody's healthy and okay, but it's something he had to tend to.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ludwig. Mr. Seymour?
Here.
Ms. Frakowski?
Here.
Mr. Prang?
Here.
Ms. Whitney? Here. And Mr. Sherrock?
Here. All right. Well, the record also show we have a lot of guests tonight. We have Councilwoman Christine Thompson, Councilman Tony Brown, Mayor Nina Rodenroth, excuse me, Councilman Bobby Brown from the city. We're so glad they're here. We have Jim Taylor with Taylor Law Firm with us as well. A lot of tenants. Grant Hooks, Joni is our hot dog lady and also one of our part-time folks here. And Miss Donna Whitney, if you didn't hear her say aye, she's our FDOT representative. Bill Prang with AECom. David Nichols, one of our tenants, former board member. Mike Sherbach, our airport interim manager and airfield manager. I've already mentioned Jim and Jay. Good to have Jay with us as well, one of our flight instructors and part of Distinguished Flyers. So big crowd tonight. So thank you for being here. And we don't have any public comment cards for our board members. You have been provided by email as well as in your packet that you have before you, the consent agenda. Looking for approval of the March 2023 financials, as well as the approval of the April 4th, 2023 meeting minutes. Mr. Logan.
I do have something as far as the minutes go.
Okay.
I want to make a correction, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time to do that or not, but it was stating in the last board meeting, I was away on a prior trip that we had an engagement that we had, and it was stated in that meeting that the airport manager, Maria, and I had worked together on the airport security plan so it could be submitted. That is incorrect. We did not work on the airport security plan together. I was never even made aware that that was something that we needed to work on. What I did work with her on was an emergency response plan that I'm trying to put together for first responders, and there's a huge difference between the two. So I know the security plan, since then I've kind of tried to update a little bit, but if somebody could at least provide me some information, is that something that's good for every 2 years, every 1 year?
2 years.
Okay, and I do have a copy of it. She initially sent me information, just some prior training that first responders had done here, and it was included in that. It's obviously a very valuable piece of work, and I had asked for a hard copy just so I could have a hard copy as I was putting together my emergency response plan. I will touch on some of that later on, but I just wanted for the record make sure that it's at least noted that I had no involvement with the plan that was submitted just recently.
Okay.
May I speak to that for just a moment?
Well, let's do this first. So on the second page of the minutes, there under airport manager, we'll strike airport security, replace that with emergency response. And so you work with Ms. Cersei on the emergency response, Mr. Ludwig?
Yes.
Okay. Was that submitted to any particular agency?
No, that was just something I was trying to do before she physically was no longer here. so she could kind of have an idea and look at it to kind of let me know, is this something, that I need to make some changes? Do we need to add some things, whatever. So I was in a race to try to do, once I got appointed and to the point before she left, I was in a race to try to throw something together to kind of have a rough draft. So that's what that was.
Okay.
And again, that's a huge difference between the security plan and the emergency response.
Okay.
Mr. Kirkland,
Yes.
if I may, I apologize. If we can adjust the minutes, and then I'll have Ms. Andrews be able to correct them as needed, but that way we're discussing the minutes that reflect the conversations of last month's meeting, that we can go on, or you can take other conversations, that way we're not mingling minutes from last month.
Okay.
These conversations versus
Okay, so,
information.
all right. So just so we'll know for Ms. Jennifer that it will read emergency plan has basically been completed. And strike the and submitted Tallahassee.
It's just, it's a work in
It's
progress.
available. Okay.
And the only reason I bring this up again is because or the security plan is basically critical between the security chair and the airport manager. I believe that that's something that needs to be noted.
Right.
Because the fact that it's not something that just floats around for anybody and everybody to go through. So.
And that's what I was going to caution. Yeah, you said you were going to mention that, but maybe you meant the emergency response. But yeah, you're not allowed to discuss that.
I'm not going to go into the details. No.
And also, if she did, that could be just an error. I don't know, but that security plan has a deadline, and if y'all weren't able to connect, it essentially stays the same. There are some variables in it, because I once was in your position. So
Yeah, I'm aware. I was able to find some.
question whether it's a typo or it's,
Yeah.
in all actuality.
Well, there's information in there that I do believe needs to be updated. So,
Right.
Yeah.
and that's, so I'm well aware of that. And I'm not going to go into the details, some of the details that's in there, just so everybody knows. But it is something that, again, if you're saying that you've signed your name to that, I'm just making it for the record that I did not sign my name to that and was never even made aware that I needed to do that.
I'll check with Ms. Cersei to find out, and that could be just the terminology that we got mixed up on that. But I'll check with her because, as Mr. Fryer said, that is a report that has to be submitted to Tallahassee every 2 years, and I believe it's up this year. So, all right, we'll get with that.
Tallahassee, the guy in Tallahassee DOT, if it was close to being due or overdue, he will be sending you emails, so.
Okay.
something like
It would have just been
that.
nice if somebody would have made me aware that that's what that needed to be done. So it was never even mentioned. I was making myself as available as I could from the minute I got appointed that first
Right.
month, because I knew there was going to be a deadline before the airport manager situation came up, so.
And that's another good question, too. I'm not sure what that deadline is for that security plan, so we'll find that out as well for Ms. Cersei. Okay.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda with the corrections.
All right, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or any other questions? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to reports, Bill Prang.
Okay, good evening, members of the board and the public. First thing I want to report on is the environmental assessment. Sometime, honestly, it's been almost 4 years ago when we started this process. I can report to you the environmental assessment is an approved document. If anybody wants to read the entire environmental assessment, there is a printed copy here at the airport. There's also a link on your website. If you go to the header, or if you're on a mobile, go to the menu, there's a link for environmental assessment, and you can download the document yourself. It's a full PDF. It was approved on April 17th by the FAA. Statements here in the first few pages, after careful and thorough consideration, the FAA has prepared a finding of no significant impact and a record of decision. Enclosed is the signed copy of the acronym there is FONSI, finding of no significant impact, and ROD, record of decision. So the EA is essentially done, and it's in the books. We are in a noticing period now. There was a requirement that when the environmental assessment is finished and signed, that it be publicly noticed for 3 consecutive weeks, and that copies are made available. So again, there's a copy on your website, and there's a printed copy here at the airport. And the public notice directs people to both of those places if they want to see a copy. There are now a couple of dominoes that can fall for those not familiar. The environmental assessment, the focus of it was the west side development area. Bradford County is already queued up, if you will, with construction of the first segment of a road on the west side. We have made the other major stakeholder aware, MHD Rockland, that the EA was approved. So that opens the door for them to pursue development at whatever pace they choose. And of course, there's other projects associated with the west side development, including some improvements in State Road 100 right-of-way, other on-airport road construction. Those projects require funding, which has not yet been secured. So we're not necessarily ready in terms of fully funded to pursue all those projects, but anything that is funded and queued up is cleared to go. I know Mr. Seaver said he read the document, so I'm not ready to answer detailed questions because I am not the environmental guy. But if anybody has any questions, I could probably answer some surface level questions, or I can jot your question down and come back with an answer. Any questions? Thank you to those who have been here throughout the entire process. It was long and time consuming, and that's kind of the way environmental assessments go. COVID really slowed this one down. In the middle of this, the FAA headquarters also did an entire reevaluation of the way they process environmental assessments. Yeah. So there was probably at least a year delay, both in the FAA figuring out how to work from home and coordinate with each other. And then every environmental assessment in the southern region was put on hold for a while the FAA from headquarters determined what they have purview over and what they don't. But now I'm starting to editorialize and I want to avoid that. Next project, anybody? Okay, so the second thing I want to update you on is the construction project that's ongoing now. And as Grant correctly pointed out, what for the last 10 days, anytime you've asked us, we've told you we're paving tomorrow. It is still true, we're paving tomorrow. The weather and the threat of weather and just some other conflicts, like subcontractors are very busy these days. The contractor has been ready to pave on taxi lanes 1, 5, and 9 for the better part of 10 days. And we missed a window of paving, which meant the paving subcontractor went to their next job, which was like a 9-day project. So, and then the threat of rain at the end of last week caused all paving companies to not pave Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because it affected one of my other projects. But their equipment is here. I saw them offloading some more equipment tonight. So we expect in the next 2 or 3 days to be paving on taxi lanes 1, 5, and 9. They've ordered sod so we can clean up edges and get sod down. We're scheduling the pavement marking company, so we hope to be able to open the areas between hangars E and F. That's taxi lane 5. Taxi lane 1 is the main hangar that goes back towards hangar A. And there's a little piece of the frontage from hangar A to B that's not paved yet. We hope in the next 3 days, those areas will all be done. Now, early this week, we milled off the old asphalt around hangar C, both sides of hangar C. They've been working on regrading and compacting the lime rock there. We probably won't pave that area until Monday or Tuesday. And that's another 2-day paving sequence. The good news is these last 2 sections of paving, 3 days this week, 2 days next week, that's the end of the asphalt work. There's still cleanup work, striping, sodding, making sure the edges are all dressed up with no more than a 3-inch drop off. So there's still more work to do. I think the contractor will be around probably until the last week of May. I think at the previous meeting, I told you maybe the middle of May or the 3rd week. I think loss of last week paving has really kind of cost us a week overall. They're still going to be more than a month early finishing when you compare to contract time. I know a lot of tenants have been inconvenienced and some are frustrated by that. So continued thanks to Mike and Scott and anybody else who fields those type of complaints. I know you guys have been active in trying to accommodate everybody's request to to get in, get out, move here, move there. So I guess I'm ready for flaming arrows and any barbs that should come my way. I know it's a difficult process, I recognize that. So Scott or Mike, you want to comment on any of the tenant coordination?
Everybody's been, fairly understanding so far. I mean, there's the one or two that
I start saying, you
continually
agree?
bring up problems. But yeah, everybody's been fairly easy to work with, yeah.
Yeah. I also, I heard this today, I knew it had happened once, and I guess, I don't feel like I owe you an apology, but to the extent that AECom hasn't been on top of the fire alarm situation, I don't know if it's true or not, I heard we've set the fire alarm off 4 times. Yeah, so it is correct. Mike just flashed me a 4. If they start charging you for that, that needs to come back to the contractor. Because in every occasion, it's been the contractor doing something a little unusual or out of the sequence we described, so that my inspector could call it in as a test. Like today or yesterday, they got water from a different hydrant. And so, when my guy doesn't know where you're getting water from, he can't possibly call in the test. So I understand at some point you may be charged for that. We're going to roll that onto the contractor. Whatever that charge is, I just need a copy of the invoice.
A little bit of comment on that is not only does the contractor do it, but if Bradford County comes out here for a fire and they launch one of the hydrants, Clay County gets a call on that too.
Yeah.
So,
One of the 4 was a fire in Hawthorne, so you guys are only responsible for 3, if that makes you feel better.
yeah.
Not much. 25%, give or take. The other thing I'd like to bring to the board on the taxi lane project, any other questions on construction schedule or anything like that? Okay. On the project, you're familiar with the concrete area that fronts this side of Hangar A. We refer to that as taxi lane 6. It's very old concrete. There was a slab down towards the far end, about midway out, mid-span of the taxi lane that was just completely shattered and cracked and depressed. We had the contractor remove all of that and place it back. A couple days before they were ready to put the concrete back in, I realized we had not included details for welded wire fabric or for doweling that slab into the adjacent slabs for load transfer. So there is a change here that's being presented for $2,400 for the cost of purchasing and placing 2 layers of welded wire fabric and number 7 3/4-inch dowels all the way around the edge of the slab. If we had had these details in the plans to begin with, it still would have cost $2,400. I think there's enough funding in the DOT portion of the project to cover this, and the DOT has already said they concur with the eligibility of the work. There's no additional funding available, but I do think as quantities net out at the end of the project, there'll be $2,400 available to cover this cost. So
I don't see a change order number listed with that.
it's change order number 1, top right corner.
Oh, that's all that is?
Yes.
There's no other, okay.
Yeah, the amount is $2,400.
Okay.
Which is down about midway right on the page. There's no time needed for the work.
Okay.
And,
I make a motion that we approve change order number 1 in the amount of $2,400 to make the new contract sum, including this change order, $2,054,956.95.
All right, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Prang? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, next project, your back runway, runway 1129. We've been working on a project that's also 100% FDOT funded. The project will replace all edge lighting, guidance signs, mandatory hold signs, runway and identifier lights on runway 11, and the PAPI system at both ends. All or most of that is currently out of service because the electrical system is defunct. So this is a project to demo all of the old equipment that's well over 20 years old and install a new system. The new system will include conduit with cabling inside the conduit as opposed to direct buried in the ground. All the light cans will be cast in concrete, and all of the other appurtenances, the patties, the reels, all those are set on concrete pads, so it's easy to mow around. We bid this project out and accepted bids last week on April 25th. We received 2 bids. A third bidder had the plans and was intending to bid, but they were too busy that week and just couldn't get their bid in. So you received 2 bids. The low bid was from TCA Electrical Contractors, Inc. Their total price for the base bid plus the alternate item is $613,400. The second bid was from Precision Approach LLC, $928,933. Our engineer's estimate for the project was $690,150. There is adequate funding in the project. There were no problems with TCA Electric's bid. TCA Electric, for what it's worth, has worked here before at the airport on a number of airfield projects. They've done some service work for you. They installed the rotating beacon and pole a couple years ago. They're one of the handful of airfield electrical contractors that are working throughout North and North Central Florida. They're actually in Tifton, Georgia. They do a lot of work in Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina as well. So they're well respected in the business, and I believe their price is good. So the recommendation from me is to award the contract to TCA Electric in the total amount of $613,400.
Mr. Brain, could you, just for the benefit of our council folks that are here,
Yeah.
we use some terms that we all understand, PAPI and
Right.
reels and rails, and so.
A PAPI is a precision approach path indicator. It's a system of lights inside of a box, and the lights are situated so that the bottom half of the light is red and the top half of the light is white. It's a split lens. And so when a pilot, you pilots, please don't shred this because I'm not a pilot. When a pilot is landing, they're looking for an even number of red lights and white lights that tells them they're right on a 3-degree approach angle. If they see all red lights, they're too low. If they see all white lights, they're too high, and they can make adjustments or go missed approach and go around.
If they don't work, then it's a big problem. Or
Yeah.
could be potentially in a instrument conditioned environment.
Yeah. So the runway's not flat, but I'll draw it relatively flat. So this is a box that sits on legs, and it's directed exactly at 3 degrees. So when the pilot is approaching the runway, this is 1,000 feet from the end, because the goal is, I believe, always to land somewhere in the first 1,000 feet.
Right.
Gives you plenty of room to run out. So the threshold crossing height is a calculation so that they cross and they're assured of not landing too short before the pavement starts. But that's what a PAPI is.
It also helps you avoid any obstructions like tree lines or anything like that, so you come in on the glide slope properly.
Yeah, 3-degree glide slope. The other device I mentioned is a REIL, R-E-I-L, runway end identifier light, much simpler operation. It simply is a set of 2 strobe lights that flash at the end of the runway. They're oriented 15 degrees out angle and 10 degrees up. They can generally, in clear skies, be seen from probably 20 nautical miles or more. In low visibility, they can be seen from 5 to 10 miles away. So when a pilot is using whatever means to approach the airport and find the end of the runway, they can use their radio in the cockpit to turn the reels on. And then by a sequence of clicks on the microphone, they can turn the reels back off when they're situated on the center line. Typically, you don't land with them on, right? Because they're pretty bright. I don't know, maybe you do.
They're deflected. Yeah, they're off to the side, so
Yeah,
they're
that's
not
why I
blinding,
So reels, PAPIs, I said guidance signs and mandatory hold signs. You want a description of those?
Yeah,
Yeah. So at each place where the taxiway provides a connection from the taxiway to the runway, there is a hold position line such that anybody that's approaching to land on the, or to access the runway at all of these connectors, there's a hold position line there. The pilot holds at that spot until they know the runway's clear. So there's a red and white sign, the nomenclature, so that all pilots know red and white is hold. And it is lined up with some yellow and black pavement markings that are called a hold bar. So you hold, you know you're outside the runway safety area when you hold outside that line. Once you know the runway's clear, you can enter the runway, probably make an announcement, entering runway or something like that. The other signs are just guidance signs. They're yellow and black, and they're simply giving the pilot guidance on where to go. You're at runway 11, you're at runway 29, exit here to get to taxiway B. Those are yellow. Again, pilots know the visual clue is the color of the sign to know whether it's a guidance sign, an informational sign, or a mandatory hold sign.
Runway edge lights too have color differentiation too, so that when you're nearing the end, they turn yellow or amber. So, number of things that delineate the runway and your placement on it, or your position on it. Taxiway lights are blue.
The board members have a piece of paper that I didn't think to make enough copies of, so if the board wants to consider that first recommendation, I will,
Is that FDOT FM, is that the bid number or the DOT's?
that's the grant number.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to award TCA Electrical Contractors total bid of $613,400 for FDOT project number 431288-2.
All right, you have a motion. Do I hear a second?
A second.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Prang on the runway 1129er lighting project?
When do you think, when are we thinking they can mobilize, Bill?
So.
Or what's our
Scott, can I hold that question because that relates to the next topic I will
Okay,
talk about.
yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, a series of numbers on the board, I'll fill these in while I'm talking. The total grant amount from the FDOT is $785,000. And again, that's 100% funded. You have already paid AECom that much, $57,595 for design. You just awarded the base bid and the alternate to TCA. So that money is now committed. And I'd like to talk to you about the remaining amount of the money and a suggestion of how to spend that money. On previous projects like this, you have engaged AECom for construction admin and part-time inspection. And I have done a preliminary proposal. If you want that service from us, we refer to that as CA and RPR, construction admin and resident project representative. I would propose 15 hours of inspection per week. That would be by my inspector, Don Cartwright, who you guys know at the airport has worked on other projects. Don is going to be on a project in Gainesville at the airport for a year. And I would propose that Don would come here first thing in the morning or at the end of the day, check TCA's work and measure quantities and help them troubleshoot anything they run into. The other part of that, the construction admin, is I'll make a weekly site visit and we'll do all of the technical review of shop drawings, submittals. We'll check their PAPI, aiming, all of that stuff. It's not mandatory that you hire us to do this, but you'll remember when we started the project, we knew we were tight on funds. So you only authorized design services to AECom about a year ago. And we were always holding to have this discussion. So just let's park that for a minute. That's a proposal there for AECom to do RPR. This $19,000 right here is for the runway end identifier lights on runway 11. You have struggled with your real lights on runways 5 and 2-3 for some time. They're older, parts are hard to come by. This is a common problem at all airports. When these devices get approaching 20 years old, circuit boards get brittle. It's easy for them to break, and then you got to go find circuit boards. So the DOT has expressed an interest in modifying, amending the grant language to include the replacement of your runway and identifier lights on runway 5 and on runway 23. It would be the same type of equipment that you're putting on 11, would essentially be the contractor installing 3 sets of runway end lights instead of 1 set. The contractor has stated they will hold this bid price as long as we give them an answer in a timely manner so they can order all 3 sets at the same time and install them when they're here installing the other sets of lights. If they have to make a second trip, or if you tell them 3 months later, hey, now I want to order those, it's understandably a different price. So for now, I've just plugged in 38,000, which is twice the 19 for reels on runway 5 and 23. And Donald, since you're here, did I properly state that you would need till the next board meeting to modify the language of the grant description?
Yes, the original grant does not cover the 5-2.
It doesn't,
523.
it doesn't
Correct.
cover any work on runway 523.
So, I need to put the wording in just amend the scope of the work and add that language in there that are, covers those other 2 runway ends. And I would have that, if that's what y'all decide on tonight, I will have it at the next board meeting, because it won't be any funding, so we can just,
It's just a wording change.
just a wording change.
And one reason, if I might, I'm the one that suggested this. Mike had replaced just the LEDs, and it was what, $1,000 for the 2 pieces, or $1,100. And runway 5 is our only RNAV approach, which means you can do an instrument approach into that runway. So those lights are vital in low visibility. And if there's the funds, that's what we thought, is we could make use of that and just modernize them on all 3 runways.
Because it looks like there's gonna be,
Yeah, and I would point out here, the last number down here is just the difference. If you, somebody can check my math here, but if you add these 5 numbers, the remainder from 785 is, you still have 39,295 as a contingency in this project if you agree to hire AECom for part-time inspection and replace the reels. Mr. Nichols has a question.
Does runway 29 not have reels?
Correct.
Okay.
It doesn't. So I would call them optional. Reels are not required on any runway.
Okay.
But I think the reason they're not there is because the proximity to 2-3 would create confusion.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
you had to pick one as the primary. So 2-3 has reels, 2-9 does not. You only have them on 11, and I don't think you have any published approaches to 2-9 anyway.
Just runway 5.
Just runway 5, yeah.
So it's a port, David, I would call it, but I don't think it's detrimental. If you're trying to land 2-9, just click on 2-3 and get close. Remember, I'm not a pilot. So don't take that as advice. Any questions? That was a lot of information. The board, if the board has this on a piece of paper, by the way, I think that's in your packet, and I just didn't have the foresight to copy for everyone.
By the way, Bill, that comes under the heading of circling to land.
Sorry, circling the land, we're back to
Right,
that.
right.
Sweet, okay, I got it.
So provided Ms. Whitney handles that language, will we have to approve a change order then next month?
So I think,
Or would it just be an amendment?
so next month, we would, if the board votes, I think maybe just by concurrency vote, if the board wants to enter into this and this, you just tell me that tonight and I'll get the ball rolling, and that will include processing a change order that you can approve next month, right after you accept the supplemental grant with new language. And if you so choose, you can also enter into our contract here.
Well, the
next
only
month. You don't have
thing
to do that
is,
today, just, these are the dollar amounts.
when I made that motion, I made it for $613,400, so that's going to change.
No, you just made a motion to award the contract.
Okay,
And that's why I drew a line here. We've done all that. I think the board just I don't know, David, this is you. I'm not asking, there's no resolution required here. You'll have to do that next month.
let's do the concurrence of what we're agreeing for this, and then when Ms. Donna brings back the revised scope,
Yeah.
then we can adopt the rest of that by motion
Yeah.
and move on then.
Yeah, well, I'll actually have a change order document to sign next week or next month for the 30th, and I'll bring a contract for AECom for this amount, if the board wants to do that. If you don't want to do that,
They won't be ready to like order the material or anything before June?
no,
Okay.
no, they won't be ready to
I
order
would-
with you.
I need to have my agreement, my amendments.
No, it'll take every bit of 4 weeks just to get their contract signed and insurance
That's
and to
what I
get their bond form submitted. So they probably won't order any of the reels until middle of June, when they can order all three together, if that's what the board, I think what you did here is just a voice vote or a concurrence, or we're not even in a motion second, so who has questions? Let's do it that way.
I would just like to make the comment, I think that sounds like the most economical thing to do.
And it doesn't cost us any money.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a good use of the excess funds that are there to take care of runway 5 and 2-3. So, yeah, I think it's a good move. So are we good with the scope being revised and?
I'll make a motion that we go along with what Mr. Prang said.
Well, we're going to wait on that until next month, only because he's going to bring back a change order that we'll need to do a motion on. What we need the consensus of the board tonight is just to move forward with what Ms. Donna's going to revise the scope of this project to include that additional. And then next month, we'll bring it all back with the change order and do a vote there. Does that answer your question?
Don't we have to make some type of motion for her to do that?
No, it's just a consensus for her to move forward with revising that scope to include this additional work. And then with the change order that Mr. Prang will bring back next month, then we'll take action on that.
Okay.
Then that will take care of all of it.
I concur.
All right, any other questions? Everybody good?
Are you also,
Ludwig, good with that? All right?
are you also concurring with the inspection?
Yes,
Part-time inspection?
yes.
Okay, all right. I don't have anything else unless there's any questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Prang. Before we move forward, I failed to do this at the beginning of our meeting, and I think I can do it now. If I can't, I might ask Mr. Taylor to tell me I can't. I want to amend the agenda just to add 2 items under my section. So I need a motion. I'll tell you what they are. We need to elect our chair and vice chair tonight by our bylaws. That's done this month. And also, we need to talk about our July meeting. Our July meeting falls on July the 4th, Tuesday. I know the city council last night moved their meeting to the next week, the following Monday. So those are the 2 items that I'd like to add to the agenda that I failed. So do I hear a motion to add those?
So moved.
All right. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Ms. Whitney?
I think that covers everything. Bill covered everything.
Right. Well, thank you again. We always appreciate everything the FDOT transportation does for the airport. It's a huge help. Couldn't do it without you. All right. On my items, just FYI, I attended Clay Day and Rule Day in Tallahassee. I was there with the Keystone group, Mayor Nina and Councilman Brown, Ms. Lynn, Ms. Jennifer was there as well. It was a good opportunity to briefly, because all of our representatives that we could talk with were either in the House doing business or in committee. So it was kind of a quick, just, hey, don't forget us, we got these appropriations out there. So it's something that we believe that's necessary. Again, these appropriation requests, it's the old thing, squeaky wheel gets attention. So we were there and able to make those contacts and I just appreciate the city and their participation, not only just the city, but all of Clay County. Had a lot of the commissioners there, constitutional officers as well. It's a team effort on both counties' parts to have as much representation for those events. And it's just good because, as Representative Payne said, when all the other representatives see that large a group from counties, then it gets their attention and they listen. So that was a good thing. Our bridge gap funding, all of the documents that we needed to provide to Capital City has been done. The loan document is now in the hands of 3 attorneys, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Commando with the city, and George Smith, who is the bond counsel for the bank. So Mr. Smith has prepared those documents, and they're being reviewed by the other 2 attorneys. Once that's finished, then it will be brought back to this board for a final approval and review, and then will be brought to the city council for their review as well and approval. Item 3 that I had, there had been a question about our fuel farm, and in your packet, there is a letter from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Mr. Harrington, Richard Harrington, Senior Environmental Specialist, had provided a letter to us basically talking about when they do the inspections and that everything that we have within our fuel farm meets all of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection regulations. So had you not seen this document before, it is something that we have in our files. And it's just another one of the inspections one of many that we have to comply with. So just wanted to make that available to everybody. Kind of some interesting things. And one in particular, just a view of inside of the equipment. And so read this over. If you have any questions, get with Mike Sherbach, and he in turn can get you some answers to what you may have a question about. The other item I had, Airport Attorney Mr. Taylor is going to start attending our monthly meetings. So if there's any questions about anything legal, then we'll refer to him with all of those and get his input and recommendation. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Taylor now? Any board members? Okay.
Sorry.
You're getting off easy, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay. Take your calendars. Let's look quickly at July. If we want to go to the following week, that will be July the 11th. As I just mentioned, the city is meeting on the 10th for their July meeting. Is there any conflict, Ms. Lynn, that you have with the 11th that we might have from the city standpoint? I know y'all got a busy calendar.
No, sir, the 11th is just fine.
11th, be good. Mr. Lovely?
I do, and I don't know if it's possible or not, either if we could move it another day to the 12th or the 13th, and I know that kind of takes us out of our Tuesday pattern, but of course, that work thing always gets in the way of my social life, so I believe I'm the only one working that's still working a full-time job right now, so I don't know if that's possible or not. If not, I'll try to make arrangements if that's going to make it difficult for everyone else.
I don't have a problem myself.
I don't either.
I don't have a problem with it.
I certainly want you here. So what about the 12th?
On a Wednesday?
Yes. Would that work for everybody?
Would that work with you?
I can make it work.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
All right. We'll set our July meeting then for the 12th and our regular time. Mr. Frank, is that going to work for you?
I work a full-time job, so. And part of that job is to be here when you have meetings, so yeah. Works fantastic.
Just really, I know you have other airports that you have to attend their meetings. Will that be okay for you as well?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, very good. All right, so we're good for the 12th. All right, thank you. And we'll get the invites out, all the information out prior to that meeting. The last item I have is election of our chair and vice chair. These are the only two positions officer positions that we have on the board. Their tenure is for 1 year. And by recently revised bylaws, just to get everything back on track, we have listed there in the bylaws that those two positions need to be taken care of tonight. So we'll go with the chair first. We need a motion to appoint someone. I'll be glad to continue to serve if you wish for me to serve. If not, we'll entertain a motion for somebody else to serve. So, Mr. Ludwig.
And I'm sorry, because this is all still new, and I'm trying to kind of get an idea of everything, how this goes on, so I don't know if we can ask questions. As far as this goes, from what I understand from the bylaws, unless it's been changed again recently, I don't, that is a city seat position, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so pretty much that brings it, I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
So that pretty much, if that was the case, as of who all we have here right now, that would just consist of the two of us, correct?
No,
we could do Charlie.
Okay, right, but with him not being here, I don't know, is that something that you can do when somebody's not here, or?
yeah. Ms. Rotowski.
So if I may, there's 4 city seats that are appointed to your airport authority. And currently, I believe that it's Mr. David Kirkland. You have a city seat, which is within 10 miles. Mr. Ludwig, you also have a city seat. Mr. Rex and Mr. Van Zandt, those are the 4 members that have the city seats. And according to city ordinances, those are the ones who are allowed to serve as chair.
And is that the same also for vice chair, or is vice chair different? I don't.
So
I don't know.
Yeah, the roles of vice chair are to take on as chair when the chairperson is not present. So I don't know that there is a requirement for the vice chair to be one of the 4 city seats unless the chair was to permanently be removed for whatever reason. And then the board would need to take an additional vote to make that a city seat.
So it's only stipulated for the chair then?
So it's for the chairperson. So if there's an acting chair for a meeting, then I believe that the vice chair can be of any member. However, if there's going to be a continued chair, then that would need to be a city seat.
And you are a city seat.
Correct.
And you are a city seat.
Right, yeah, I'm just trying to get an idea as far as the people go, so that would be about the 4 of us.
And you're Bradford County?
Bradford
County seat, and I'm the Clay County seat. Right.
So because of the sunshine law, and that's not being able to discuss things and all that, how do we go about is if finding out if anybody's even interested in running for that, or sitting for that seat?
In the past, it's always, our custom has been just to have that discussion during our meeting when those positions come up to be reappointed, reelected.
Welcome to Florida.
Welcome to Florida.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Well, personally, I'd be glad for David Kirkland to continue in that capacity.
I have one question. Can we nominate Mr. Van Zandt, even if he wasn't here?
Call and tell him. I don't know that would be difficult because I think that it would be probably appropriate for him to accept the position.
Okay. I was just wondering about that.
Council's done it to our former council members in the past, but it is probably more appropriate to ask if he'd be willing to serve that.
Right, right.
Yeah, and because of the sunshine law, we can't do that outside of here, so with him not being here, that pretty much leaves that kind of in the air.
Yeah.
And as far as us having open discussion about it right now, I know I possibly, this is all brand new, I'm still getting up to speed. Is there anyone else here that's interested? And when I say anyone else, You know, that leaves it to
I'm
the
new
two of
like
us.
you.
So, yeah, so that's my biggest thing is having been able to have the discussion and figuring out how we can have that discussion, if this is how we do it, or if we continue, you know, if we just move it down the road after having this discussion and then go into the next month. So if everybody's comfortable.
Yeah, since it wasn't on the original agenda that was placed out, do we have to do it tonight? Can we move it to next month? And actually put it out on the agenda ahead of time, like it's supposed to be? And that way, everybody would have the opportunity to be here possibly.
Well, we have a quorum. We have the majority of our board
But
present.
it didn't meet the deadline.
We just made a motion to put it on the agenda to allow it,
We did all agree, Jim. Yeah, you're right.
and we voted on it.
It is up to the board if you want to continue this item to the next. You did do the proper process to put it on there. However, the board chooses, then it would have to be a board decision to do so.
It's the board's pleasure.
Were you making a motion earlier? You didn't say you made a motion. Were you making a motion or no?
I
He made it.
didn't say motion, but,
You didn't say the word motion, but anyway. If you just made a
I'd like to
motion.
make that motion.
Okay. Well, I'll second that.
All right, let's discuss it. We had a little bit of discussion. Any questions about the motion?
What is the motion?
The motion,
The motion was for David Kirkland to continue in the capacity of chair.
all right, motion and second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Ms. Griffiths? Chief Griffiths?
She needs to be appointed by council. You have.
Oh, that's right. I'm the tiebreaker.
Tiebreaker.
I vote aye. All right. Vice Chair. Mr. Fryer has served as Vice Chair and done an excellent job. All of you know his involvement here literally every day. And he's always been at every meeting, at every workshop. I know there's been a couple of occasions where I wasn't available to sign documents. That's one of the things that the vice chair steps up to do. He's always been available. And so he's done a good job at that. So we need a motion for a vice chair.
If I could just suggest, if you don't mind, maybe we could just kind of review what are the general duties of the vice chair?
The duties are if the chairman is absent, but I do sign documents for the grants, for releases. What are those I sign, Bill, that are for the releases for the checks or whatever?
Yeah, pay applications,
Yes, pay applications.
Invoices for the state.
DOT invoice reimbursement packages.
Right.
You signed a few of those.
Quite a few.
Vice chair essentially does, in my absence or my removal, everything that the chair does.
Unless it's a permanent removal, and then you'll have to go back to a city seat.
Correct. And I don't know, you might have to speak up, Ms. Rutowski, because I don't know that the audio is picking you up.
Oh, I said unless it's a permanent removal, and then it has to go back to a city seat by ordinance.
Right. So what's the pleasure of the board? Do I hear a motion for a vice chair?
It's the same, we're in the same boat for the last position. We have one present, and I know I'm not available to step up to that role yet. Are you interested?
I'm just as new as you are.
We're in the same boat still.
I would say if Mr. Scott Fryer wouldn't mind to continue as a vice chair, I would like to make that a motion that just trying to say this correctly here. Make a motion for Mr. Scott Fryer to continue as the vice chair of the board.
All right, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Can I make a second on my own part or no? Is that inappropriate?
Yep. Yep.
I'll second it then.
All right, motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
You're not appointed yet? I'm the tiebreaker. Aye. All right. Moving on. Mr. Fryer, airfield updates.
Okay, Justin and Mike have been working feverishly on taxiway Bravo. So when a runway 1129 went down, there really was no need for the taxiway lights, and unfortunately they went in a state of disrepair for some time, and they are of an older design. So thankfully, somebody had the foresight to save when did we do the taxiway Alpha? Has that been 3 years ago, the rehab?
2018.
So they saved a lot of those fixtures, which were very much, I think they're the same identical fixtures as they replaced them with. Anyway, they have been going through and testing those, changing light bulbs, pigtails for the plug connections. Anyway, they have got, I think it'd be fair to say 95% of them illuminated again. And some of those are still the old style, which you plan to even go back if we have surplus and replace those. So, and we wanted to do that. I suggested Mike take that on as a task because of the runway 1129 coming up. If we have the runway lit, but we don't have the taxiway lit, we'd be in violation. So kudos to those guys. They've done a great job on that. We've already done the first cycle of airfield grass cutting. Everything essentially has been cut at least one time. That's a continuing thing. And over here on this DEO grant on the road they're building in, they needed a stack out location. So we allowed them to stack on the old threshold for runway 1634. They've got limestone and dirt and trees they pull out of there. So they are going to remove the trees, but since they're under the deadline of trying to get that road done quickly, we allowed them to stack those trees out, and they will chip and remove those from the field when they get done with that job. But they're making good progress over there, doing a very good job. And that's all I've got.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fryer. Mr. Dejanay, update on the Keystone Heights Junior Senior High School field trips.
Well, last month we were able to participate on their career day, field trip day. We had a pretty good group come out here on the 11th, the Tuesday and Thursday that week, 11th, 13th. So both junior high and senior high young folks came out here, and we were able to really give them a pretty good show of the aviation industry, I guess I would say, between MHC Rockland, the Coast Guard also came out here, and with us talking about general aviation as well. Tomorrow, we're hosting another school field trip, but this is with a homeschool group. Tomorrow, about maybe 25 folks or so. So educate some more young folks about the possibilities of aviation in their future.
It was a great turnout. We had 32 of the freshmen, sophomores that came out on Tuesday. We had 20, I think 3 that showed up, seniors, juniors and seniors. And feedback that we've gotten from teachers that came out and those that were involved with that field trip has been very positive. So very, very exciting that kids were exposed to real airplanes and from just general aviation, single engine, all the way up to what Rockland's flying, so.
Even
It's a good
aerobatic
day.
airplanes.
Had an aerobatic.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was here.
And he gave him a pretty good little education about aerobatic flight.
Yep.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may add, my son was one of those who attended, and he thoroughly enjoyed it. He's kind of been around aviation just by virtue of me. However, he did say that some of his friends that went, they were very interested and very intrigued and have now since thought about a different career path. So it was a big success.
Oh, good.
Very good. Something we've been working with the school. Miss Cersei and I had worked with CTE there and participated with them, and then Mr. Dagenet came on board and he took my place. So it's glad to see that finally happening. We've been talking about this for several years and just never could get that field trip here. So hopefully it's just the start of many more trips that we'll be seeing from the high school kids. So thank you, Mr. Dagenet, for all you've done there. Mr. Ludwig.
Righty. First, I'm going to talk about the emergency response plan that me and Ms. Searcy were working on prior to her leaving here. And just to kind of give a little detail on that, I'll keep that part pretty brief. And it's a work in progress, but essentially what it is, I have a background as a first responder, 25 years as an airport firefighter, working on airports. Something that we routinely do, the training and procedures as far as how you would respond to the airport on an emergency, staging areas, gate access gates, and those type of things. So pretty much what that program would consist of would be airport familiarization, aircraft familiarization, kind of go over some of their tools and equipment, and then also some tactics to deal with aircraft emergencies. Hopefully with that, there would be a classroom session put together in a PowerPoint, and then also be able to go out to the ramp area and hopefully be able to tour a few aircraft just so they can kind of put eyes on and be able to see, this is how an aircraft door opens, or this is how they're located, just because they are a little different from automobiles and the things that you would see on a day-to-day basis when you're over on the street side. So I think it's really important. I know this airport operates a little different because of the fact that it's an uncontrolled airport, and you have people here sometimes and people not here sometimes, and they may have to come out under various situations. So I think it would just be something that would be better to kind of give everybody on the same page, hopefully, and to kind of make things a little more organized if possible, and also to cut down on incidents of people just randomly driving around in places that they shouldn't be, and potentially creating other problems. So that's what that is, and that's what we were working on, and not the security plan. And I know they both kind of sound, because they both have plan at the end of it, but that's the difference on that. And again, that's a work in progress. So we'll be continuing to put that together and trying to reach out to the responding agencies between fire department as well as police department, so we can get everybody here and try to organize the time and have everybody here to be able to do this at some point in the future.
And Mr. Ludwig, just for our guests to understand, when you say uncontrolled, what he means by that, we don't have a control tower here at the airport like other regional airports. So our pilots fly and communicate on a Unicom frequency. When they're in the pattern or coming into the airport, there's communication that they learn when they're flying. So that's why we refer to this airport as uncontrolled, because we don't have a control tower.
Exactly. So the next thing I'm going to move to is new member observations. And this is where it might get a little change gears here. I've not had the opportunity the last couple of meetings to be there because of a prior engagement with a pre-planned trip, and then the workshop that came up, I had to be at work. So having to watch and see the things that were going on from afar, and it gave me an opportunity to kind of organize my thoughts to kind of weigh in on the situation. And essentially, kind of, this is my chance to finally kind of get in on the action. There's a lot of good things. I want to start out at least saying there was a lot of good things about this airport. This is a really cool place. There's a lot of good people here. I appreciate all the time that Scott had spent helping me out and walking me through, kind of showing me the ropes around here, and helping to get me up to speed. I appreciate the time that Mike has spent with me, as well as the same. He's had some good information. He's had some calming words there. I have a tendency to get amped up from time to time, and when I get very passionate on something, and I had basically came in guns blazing one day, and he was able to kind of to help me calm down, take a breath. So I appreciate him calming that down there. But I'm still kind of an outside observer because I am so new to this right now, and I've seen things that do concern me. I came into this with a neutral mindset. I wasn't trying to side with city council or side with our board. I wanted to come in and try to look at this as a new person. On the night of my appointment, I had no idea what I was stepping into as far as all the things that were happening prior to me getting involved. I just thought this would be a great thing for me to transition into as I'm getting closer to retirement. I have a passion for aviation, and this is the next phase for me. This is a wonderful opportunity out here, and I hate to see things in the situation that it is, but sometimes these things have to be addressed. Of course, it'd be easy to sit here and throw out all the positive things and all, because there's a tremendous amount of positive, but we're here as a board, and as employees of the airport, as well as city council, we have to address the negatives and to fix whatever negatives that need to be fixed. Right now, I don't know where I stand as far as which way it goes with what's going on. And again, I'm trying to look at all sides equally on that. But what I will say is the gesturing that I've noticed and witnessed from the body language at the meetings, whether it was our previous board meeting where we had the topic of lease agreements got brought up, and I know there were some people here that were here for that, as well as tenants, that brought in a lot of tenants. As new board members, we should be able to ask questions. We should be able to come in, and if we're not asking questions, then we're not doing our job. It's easy for these guys that have been here for a long time. They've seen things and they've known things because they're used to this. For us new guys, if we're coming in and we're not doing anything, we're just a bump on the log and we're not doing what we were appointed to do. So it gives the wrong image. Even if everything's on the up and up, that's great, and that's what we hope for. That's what anybody would hope for. But it gives the wrong image, and there was definitely a lot of defensive gesturing that was going on, a lot of questioning that was going on that night. So, that's very concerning to me. And again, if somebody coming in with an open mind, it's like, hey, wait a second, why are people getting so defensive? So that's something. There's terminology that I've heard that's come from our side. We're very disappointed that people don't trust us. That they think we're up to something no good. Again, that's not good. And if everything's on the up and up, it shouldn't be. It should be, okay, well, let's all look at this thing together and let's answer questions, or let's look at whatever we need to look at and move forward from there. But something I wanted to also talk about, and I've spoke to a few people as far as on the night of my appointment. Again, I had no idea what I was getting into that night. And I know there was support for the previous board member that was here before. And he ran for the same position that I was running for. And I understand you guys worked with him, you knew him, and I expect that you would come in and support. And I told everybody, I don't harbor any hard feelings about that. But since then, because of seeing some of the other actions that I'm seeing in the defensive stances about things, it starts to make me question, because I expected to have, when I saw there was somebody else, and it was somebody that you guys knew and were more familiar with, I thought, you know what, I'll give you that. I understand you're going to defend your guy. So, with that being said, moving into the workshop the other night, or the other day, the term instability came up. And Mr. Kirkland, I believe that was, you had brought up the thing. And in that workshop, you even had MHD Rockland representative came in to also defend. You know, I know, again, with these tenants that are here, you know, they're coming in because they're hearing things and seeing things, and there's two sides to every story, you know, and I believe that they need to understand everything as far as both sides of the story. With the instability, I want to address the quote here, because some of this pertains to me. For the last 3 months, changes with some board members, that shows instability. That was the comment that was made when Councilman Thompson had addressed, you know, the instability thing too. It stood out. That's what grabbed my attention immediately, because that's a big word, you know, and it looks like everything's on shaky ground. But again, for the last 3 months, changes with some board members, that shows instability. Well, I would fall into that category as some board members. You know, I have tried to come out here and ask questions and work along with you guys. I have experience. I didn't realize that I had the experience the night that I stood up for my appointment. I didn't know that I was going to be in the safety security chair. As a fireman on an airport for the last 25 years, safety and security is one of our top things that we constantly, it is hammered in us. We work on it. Every year, we have to do annual training on safety and security. I mean, safety is everyday part of the job, but security, you know, it's paramount. So that was a very concerning statement to me about the instability because of the changes in the board members. And then Mr. Faulkner came in from MHD Rockland to kind of back that up. And his question was, or his statement was, you know, he wanted to know from a business standpoint, why would you not reappoint someone with the expertise in that particular job field? In that now they're concerned, they have $27 million that they're looking at using for airport improvements, and now they're concerned because of the instability, potentially because of change in board members. I would like for somebody to address to me tonight in this room, okay, we're talking about, and I may term it wrong, the resource management timber chair position. Why is that position so critical to this airport that everything's going to come apart? It's going to create so much instability because you're changing out the natural resource timber management position. Can somebody tell me that? Because again, that's what we're focused on. We're focusing on that position.
I can answer that.
I understand that trees, you have to make sure that's all taken out of the way for the approach path and all that. That's not what I'm talking about though. Why is that position so critical that is the airport's on complete shaky ground because that position has been changed out?
I don't think the word shaky ground is appropriate. What I think is outside of the airport property itself, what is the only other monetary resource the airport has? It's the timber. So we have an expert on board with our timber so that when it's appropriate, the timber can be harvested and sold. So it's a monetary resource, and that's where his expertise lies.
Right, and I understand that as a monetary resource, but how is that hampering flight operations? You're a flight instructor, is that what I heard? Okay, is that stopping you from taking off and landing and doing your flight operations here every day, the timber management?
I never brought that up.
No, I'm not saying you did, but you're addressing that. So that's where my question is, because all of this doom and gloom and all this that's been going on for these meetings that we're having is all because of that position. So that's what I'm saying. When I say shaky ground, you know, I just would like for somebody to address to me why that position is so important that this airport hinges on that position.
I don't think it hinges on that position. I think all of our responsibilities and the tasks that we have a direct impact on the operations of the airport. Yours in particular, if we're going to say what's equal, yours would be as equal to that as anything. Because safety and security is critical to our airport.
Right.
So as far as the instability, that came about simply because of all of the changes that were occurring. And it started in January with the appointments. So from that time on, even the tenants were asking us, so what's going on? Well, here's what's going on. This is what the city decides, because by charter, and it's Article 38 in the charter, they have full authority to appoint every seat. They have full authority to remove every seat. And so they're doing their diligence in the appointments as they come up, when a term expires and it's been reappointed. The question that I had stood up and asked and addressed was that we had someone who was qualified in that particular natural resources area, had been doing the job for years. And why would we just remove him and replace him with someone else who didn't have that experience? So that was my only question. Mine wasn't about personalities or individuals. It was about simply experience and qualifications. Now, here's a perfect example. With your background in firefighting and being at Jackson International, super qualified for that safety and security. You have insight that none of the rest of us have, and that's what makes this board really, I think, good and effective, is because you bring that expertise. He brings expertise from the FAA standpoint because he's worked with them on rewriting manuals. So I think each of us bring a different perspective and experience and even technical knowledge to the board that I think has made us very effective and productive.
And I agree. And my thing, and again, what I'm trying to kind of reiterate here and point out, I mean, change happens. We all know that. You know, people swap out positions all the time. Politicians swap out, you know, people from other companies swap out. And it happens, and people just have to readjust and move forward. And that's the way life is, and that's the way things go. It's been very frustrating to sit back and just watch how this is being portrayed and making out. And I just wanted to bring it into perspective tonight. And again, point out the fact that all of this is going on because of that chair position. And that's why I said, I just want to know, why is that position so critical to the point that, I mean, this gigantic picture of doom and gloom? I understand he had expertise in it, he had experience in it, he was probably doing a great job, you know, doing that, and I understand it is. But again, this is going on. I want people to know that this is going on for the resource management position.
Well, I take issue.
Operations of this area.
I take issue with the doom and gloom description because it's never been that. It's always been the fact that we have, as Jay mentioned, the majority of our properties here are silviculture. Our airfield's 700 acres maybe, runways and infield area,
Right.
hangar area. So that's a big part of our airport. It's a big part that we have property over here on Crystal Lake that's never been really looked at for development or use. So it's never, even with Mr. Richard being replaced, Mr. Seamer's come in, getting information all the time. He's got some things on the agenda here, but, you know, we've offered there to help out in any way because we know he's admitted he's got a military background and a fire background. So he's going to have to come up to speed. And you know what? We're going to work on that. We're going to work with him as best we can in meetings or with management, you know, getting with Mike, whatever it may take to help bring him up to speed so he can be effective in that position. But it's never been that, okay, just because the city council didn't appoint the person that we thought was most qualified, that it was going to shut the airport down. That was never the case.
Right, but again, when you sit back and you watch it, that's what it comes across. And when I say doom and gloom, that's my term, because that's what's being painted. And it's easy, you sit here and say, well, you know, we're willing to help him and do that, and I understand. I'm not saying that you won't. Just from what I've witnessed, it hasn't been that simple. I've seen a lot of pushback. And again, what I saw the night when he mentioned lease agreements. And again, I know that wasn't in his role. I know that I believe you had addressed that about, you know, I knew to stay in my role. Again, the answer that he gave that night, I understand completely what he's talking about because I work for the same department. We didn't know each other. Our paths never crossed. He works in rescue. I'm an airport firefighter. We never see each other, never crossed. But what he explained that night when he said, we have to know our roles. The position that I'm in, I may have to step up and do an officer role, or I may have to step down and do a firefighter role. We have to cover everything.
You do.
We all look out. Right now, you've got an airport manager, interim right now. He's having to step up in another role. So that's something that we all do. So that's what I'm saying. When he's attacked for asking questions or wanting to look into things, that's what bothers me. And I'm not here just to completely
Speak
defend
something
him.
though, if I may,
but-
please. I tell you, if I had it to take back, and you've got almost your entire city council here, I wish I had never gotten up, because that does seem to be the catalyst. When we asked, we didn't demand, and I said this the other night, we requested a reconsideration for Chad. I have no personal friendship with Chad outside of this board. I never met him till he was on this board. But I would agree if I could take it back, because this has driven a wedge. And when you talk about instability, I want you to consider this. This board has changed drastically. This man's only been on the board 8 months. This man's been on the board, what, 3 months? You've been on the board 2 months. Mr. Van Zant's only been on the board for a couple or 3 months. We have changed 65% of our board like that. Instability is a scary word. It's probably a word that shouldn't be used loosely, but there is instability. The other thing we have.
But it hasn't shut the airport down.
hasn't shut it down.
Or impacted the operations of our everyday.
No, it has not.
Operations here.
Where you have new people having learning.
We do, and we have to
It's not
help.
instability, it's learning curves.
We have to help. We have to help bring y'all up to speed. But the other side of this too is we've got this tit for tat going on. At our meeting the other night at the city council, or well, last night. Was that last night? I wasn't there, but I watched it on YouTube. Because I wanted just to slow down and let's let everybody just cool off. But Mr. Brown made a comment that one of the board members had told him Bradford County was trying to get this airport. Now, he didn't say which board member, but I think this board has a right to know if an individual sitting at this table is going in secret and talking to Bradford County. That'd be a violation of our board. He didn't say a name, and that's your prerogative, I guess. But I feel like we're on the defensive too, and I know they feel like they're on the defensive. And we were cohesive for so long, and that's why I honestly wish I had never gone to that meeting in February and asked for the reconsideration. It has divided us in ways. I know there's hurt feelings, there's upset, there's a lack of trust now. But I will tell you this, we do know how this airport runs, and it runs a lot differently than a city. There are great similarities, I would grant you. But a man told me years ago, and this is a true statement, and I think any of these gentlemen or ladies that are here from a tenant's point of view, aviation is a high cash flow, low profit business. And if you don't believe it, go out here and try to buy one of these little Cessnas brand new. They're $600,000 for a 172. And the only people that can afford to buy them brand new are flight schools like Embry-Riddle. And when we talk about this advisory board coming up, if the city so chooses to go that way, that is certainly the city's prerogative. But we're trying to give advice. We're trying to do what we think is right. And because they're on the defensive, and we feel like we're on the defensive, we're fighting each other over nothing. And the catalyst was, I think where feelings got hurt, there was too much passion in the room that night in February. I don't think anybody said anything that was absolutely derogatory, but I could see, and I think our new mayor made a point of that the other in the workshop. I can absolutely see, and let me say this, I mean, we're discussing this, but you made me stop and think, Mayor. You did. You made me think. And I wanted to go back and look at those meetings, and I've reviewed it, and I could see where the council felt like they were being attacked. I can honestly say that. Now, as far as Mr. Seamer looking at the records, I did question that, but I didn't beat him up on that. I just said, why do you need, and maybe the tone of voice I used. I just didn't understand why you'd need to But that.
I mean, it got to the point
That I
where you
found
had two
out
people
is a
having to bring up the
violation.
sunshine law.
It's a violation of the Freedom of Information Act, I believe.
Right.
So
Part of
he has that
statute
right.
119.
But it was a genuine curiosity of my part, but we seem to be at odds, and you can feel the tension in the room. And maybe it's good that you're airing this out, but I think
Well,
it's
because
on
I haven't
both
had that
sides.
opportunity. You guys haven't. That's so I
And-
apologize because I'm bringing it up.
No,
late.
I
And I
think
don't
it's
want to
good.
get sidetracked on the other. I just wanted to bring in the instability comment because again, that's something that did not set right. And it looks bad. It's not a word that should be thrown around. I plan on, in the coming months, I will come around and talk to all the tenants personally. I have no problem talking. I enjoy talking. I'm a people person, so I will come try to get to know you guys. I want to hear your concerns and I don't mind addressing any of those things. But I just wanted to emphasize the fact that these terms and concern from our biggest tenant, if they're wanting to continue their operations or not, all has to do with the natural resource management chair position not being reappointed.
It doesn't have to do with that. That was the
Well,
catalyst, I
but-
think.
But again, that's what.
We haven't even talked about that in the last few
That's
meetings.
But that's what it is. It doesn't have to be talked about. It's still being dealt with to this day.
Right.
Now, here's where I'm going to transition to the next thing. I'll get away from that. Okay. The next thing is where I believe people should be concerned about, tenants and all, is the fact the airport manager position. That position is somebody that deals with the daily operations of this airport that could affect you guys, your tenants, your flight services and those kind of things. That is a very important position. I know right now we're operating with an interim, and I talked to Mike the other day in length, and I, again, appreciate all of his time. He assured me that he's able to kind of handle and juggle both roles right now. But the thing is I don't know that that's fair to him to do that, and this is me speaking, not Mike.
Did he tell you he's doing both roles?
He stepped up to do the other, but
Airport
if
manager.
something breaks on this airfield, is he not going to?
No,
is he
you don't
not
know.
doing any
See,
of
you
that?
don't know.
That's why I'm asking.
Justin has been stepped up.
Right, everybody's stepped up. Now, I want to ask you about that as far as staffing goes.
Right.
In the previous board meeting in April, you stated that Justin was only here 3 days a week. Is that
That's
still
changed.
correct?
No, that's
So he has stepped up, okay? We only have 4 people at this airport, an airport manager, the airfield manager, and then the 2 people that work underneath the airfield manager, correct?
Lori. Yeah, Lori.
Okay,
Right.
but that are physically out having to do things on the airfield. Okay, so with the airport manager situation right now being what it is or whatever and all, you're assuring me that Mike is not having to do any other role besides he's able to focus and stay right there and do everything.
Maria is a phone call away.
Right.
How long, may I ask this, how long was the city manager's position vacant while you were stepped up?
1 month.
Okay? It's been 1 month since Maria's left.
Okay, and I want to add to that. Okay, Maria's resignation letter is dated January 23rd. Okay, as of, and we can go back and look at that if we need to explore that. It's there, I know what it is, it's January 23rd. Because the reason I know that is because as soon as I hit the ground, I had to hit the ground running because I started hearing that she's leaving. So I knew in order for me to put together what I needed to do, that I had to work with her, and I needed to see how much time I had. I hated the fact that she was leaving because I know I have to work with the airport manager. But January 23rd was the resignation letter. As of the workshop, which was April 24th, you had stated that we haven't filled that position yet because we need to look long and hard to get the right fit. Okay, so that's 3 months there. Now we're into May. We're going into our 4th month, and we've not even advertised for that position.
Are you stating that she left on January 23rd?
No, I'm saying you knew then.
We knew.
With the official resignation letter.
Right.
So why were we not preparing at that time is kind of where I'm going with that, knowing that this is coming. I know her last day was March 31st.
Well, you don't know everything then, do you? One of the things I believe Chair Kirkman had her do was work on the job description and make sure it was adequate.
We're going into 4 months without, and we've not even advertised.
Okay, let me address that. So Ms. Cersei and I went through her job description, got all of that up to date because obviously what she did was not reflected in the existing job description. That's done. Ms. Lynn has received a copy of it. Mr. Brown, I think, got a copy of it as well. I had not pushed going out any further because, and I'm glad I didn't, because at the workshop the other night, we found out, or at the council meeting last night, found out that the council has interest in participating in those job interviews. So what I was going to propose when we get to that point is I think the mayor and Steve Hart should be part of that council that comes and participates in those interviews. I talked to Mr. Commando this morning at the Bradford Commission, and that's treated as a public meeting, so it would be posted, so everything would be legal, as far as that standpoint, as far as sunshine. So with some changes that have occurred since January, then we didn't want to rush out and do anything, because here's the reality. We still don't know, and we won't know until the 1st of August, what the state of this airport authority will be. We don't know. So,
But all of that came after the fact. Again, going back to January, why there was no planning that was being put forth to go ahead and start looking for a person. Because again, that's an important position. That's the position I would think everybody around here would be concerned about going, we want to make sure everything's, whatever, and that's covered.
well,
But instead, we're talking about the other position.
okay, I'll take the blame for that. But again, I didn't bring it to this board simply because I wasn't sure what the council was going to do. Still not sure what the council's going to do. And they've got till the 1st of August to determine what they plan to do. I didn't want to get in front of them. I didn't want to get outside of them with that. And if that's an issue, I'll take that, I hear what you're saying. I understand. It's not unusual, though, for some major positions to take a while. We didn't want to just generally go out. One of the things we were going to look at is going to the Florida Airports Council. We're a member of that. Use that as a resource for posting that position. So it's not that we haven't done anything. It's just we've got everything ready. It's just we hadn't pulled the trigger. I hadn't brought it to the board simply because, to me, we're in a state of flux right now.
And we have the position covered.
And can I?
Sure, Mr. Seaman.
Certainly.
One thing that, since we're talking about this, is I was here when you made the decision that Maria was going to be kept on part-time and that Mike would be stepping up and that Justin would be coming in and taking his place on a part-time basis.
Okay, let me stop just for a minute, because I didn't make that decision. All staffing decisions are made by the airport manager. So prior to Maria leaving full-time, those steps had already been put in place. That had been discussed with the staff, and she made those appointments.
I thought that was our job.
No,
The airport manager is not our job?
the airport manager is our job.
Okay, well, that's what I just said.
No, I don't think that's what you said, because you were
Hiring of the
talking,
airport
you were
manager
talking
is our
about
job. The other employees, it's the airport manager's job.
staff is the airport manager's job.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay?
You said that Mike was going to be moving to the airport manager job. Did I not say that?
As information?
Right.
Okay?
Well, that's up to the board,
No,
correct?
no,
No, it's up to Maria.
it's up to the airport manager.
She was a current employee when she made that decision.
Well, why are we even talking about an airport manager now and us having to put it out if we're not the people that's going to be doing it? If we don't make that decision, then why are we even talking about it?
We will make the decision about who the new airport manager will be, along with the city.
Did the position of her going to part-time, was that put in front of the board as a voting thing? How did that come about? Is that,
No, because that's a staff decision.
so the staff can just?
I mean, that's a manager decision for staff.
Falls within the budget.
If she left and resigned, she is no longer the manager. And Mike is the manager. And he's a manager because the old manager made him the manager.
The interim manager.
Maybe, Mr. Taylor, can you explain to me what the difference is? I mean, you're the attorney for the airport. I don't understand how a staff member can appoint another staff member to take her place.
Because our bylaws state that the airport manager makes all of the staff decisions. It's just like with the city. Ms. Rotowski, she never brings staff before the council.
No, but if I may interject, because my mayor is looking at me here, and so I want to make sure that we've got all roles clear. If I were to resign, or, I mean, we'll use real personalities that everybody knows. When Mr. Cornegay resigned, he did not appoint me as interim manager prior to his resignation, prior to his leaving. That's a council conversation because Mr. Cornegay was no longer a part of that conversation. He may have advocated for me, but that had to be handled at a council level. And it was not up to Mr. Cornegay to put in staff members in place. And so I think because of the conversations or the eyes that I've been getting from my counsel there, trying to figure out what's going on, I think that that's what Mr. Rex is alluding to, is that and I'll ask the question because now I'm curious as well, did Ms. Searcy put in place her interim manager prior to her leaving? Or was that a board decision?
That was not a board decision.
Am I wrong in asking that question? Was that the question?
No, but again, I don't see what the difference is because we never discussed how much she was going to get paid in her part-time position. And I think that should be discussed because you just said there'd just be some jiggling of the numbers and figures for the pay. And so we don't know how much she's getting paid. We don't know how much more Mike is getting paid. We don't know how much now, because it was supposed to be, Justin was just going to be here a few days a week, and now he's full-time. You know, who made that decision? Did Mike make that decision to bring him on full-time?
Yes.
Okay.
Because he's the manager. And the
Right,
way- Okay,
I'm just asking.
sure.
So so when are we going to discuss how much she's getting paid? Maria.
The staff and the payroll is handled by the manager. All we do is approve a budget, and payroll for staff is within that budget. We don't look at what, you can look at it. We're not saying you can't look at it. It's public record. But it's just like with the city. So just way the city manager, same way with their staff. That's all handled by that manager level.
So for clarification, and I love that my council's sitting here looking at me for this. From the city's perspective, from the city's point, and it seems to be compared a lot, the council handles everything that has anything to do with my job, or the city manager's position, taking personalities out of it. They manage what my role is, if they like the city manager, if they don't, if it's time to replace it, if the city manager leaves, then who's going to be the interim? That's all the role of the council. The staffing is then up to the city manager within the budget that's approved by council. Now, if numbers fluctuate outside of that budget, then the city manager has to take that back to their council. And I'm only speaking of this because I believe your bylaws are similar to what we have to follow. So the airport manager then would make decisions based on increases or staffing or whatever else on what each individual staffer is making. But the manager position itself is the responsibility of the board. The interim manager position is the responsibility of the board. If that manager decides to resign or that position fluctuates, that's the responsibility of the board.
And I brought that information to the board, I believe it was a couple of meetings ago, of what we were going to do, that Maria, Ms. Cersei was going to go part-time, that Mike was going to step up as manager, and then at that time later, he brought Justin up.
And I think we all agree on that. I think what the confusion is, or at least I can speak for myself, is exactly what the city manager is saying, is you would think it would operate the same way, that this would also, that any decisions as far as that goes would be something that would be coming in front of the board, not the employee themselves can decide their fate and everybody else's fate, and then it doesn't, it completely bypasses us. I think that's where the confusion's at.
On just the manager position?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, again, that's
And I would
something
concede to that too.
that we need to bring that out.
I mean,
You know-
that would be the same thing as, well, I'm just going to make you it, and it's our position to a point. So, and I'm not saying anything bad about Mike, I'm just saying that it was never brought up to a vote or even a consensus. Is that going to be okay to make him the interim manager?
So when I brought that up to the board previously, then why didn't you ask the question then?
I didn't know that that was going to be a long drawn out thing. I didn't know that it was going to take this long.
And that's where I am. I'm the same way, because again, from my knowledge in trying to get up to speed and seeing the amount of time, again, it's like, why is this happening? Why is this process? And we're still no closer now than we were, other than maybe having a job description. The analogy I would put it as, it's like going fishing. You're going to go fishing, but you can never catch a fish because you've not even thrown your line out there. And to kind of include in all this, because of the statement, we haven't even posted it yet because we want to look long and hard before, to try to find the right fit. Well, who is we? Is that going to include all of us, the entire board? And we're going to be in on this process, and we're going to interview and talk to people?
Certainly.
Because again, I believe that's important. We all do bring something different to the table. And I believe that's something that we all should have a part on. And again, this is a new process for a lot of people. I don't know how many times you guys have been through this process. So,
I've done it a lot.
this is
A lot of people over
this is the concern. And it's, again, I feel like it's the right concern, and the right questions we should be asking, but, I still addressing the one question that still stands is, the fact that it has taken this long.
Well, let me interject something
Why has
else.
it taken this long?
Well,
Educate.
okay, wait a minute,
Why-
Mr. Farmer.
Why is it our system is not set up like how the city system is, to where it's any movement of any personnel whatsoever, full-time, part-time, moving up position, all that, not brought in front of the board? So those are the two questions: the length of time this is taking, and why are these positions not, movement of positions?
So for clarification, the city's policy is, again, the council deals with with the city manager's position only. It is up to the city manager to promote, to remove, to hire, fire, move around, and whatever else. That's within the city manager's purview of the budget. If anything comes outside of that budget, then the city manager has to present that budget and budget amendments to the council for approval of adjusted line items. That's when we get into conversation of who's doing what, or justify why I'm asking for that budget amendment. But anything that is within staff is under my supervision. It's my role. Council deals with the city manager's role only.
Yeah,
So
and that's what I
just-
mean, just for our manager. I'm not talking about everybody else underneath. I'm just talking about for our manager. Why are we not set up in that same?
Okay, so my response to, with me waiting, is I'm really waiting on the city council, because we may put something in place and get ahead of the city council.
Right. And we're there now, but we weren't there before. That's what I'm saying. That's only just a recency. So now that we can say that, which is, I guess it's good that it's worked out that way. But again, that's a concern for the tenants. You know, when I'm seeing where the concern has been, why was this not a concern from the tenants? That's my question on that. And we're highlighting it, we're bringing it out to the open now, which I believe it needs to be. So,
Not a concern of the tenants? You talking about the management of the airfield?
no, why that position wasn't being filled, but they were more concerned about, everyone's been more concerned about, you know, the changing of the chair position. That was my,
Well, I think, and let me back up a little bit. I think pure logic for Maria was there's only two people that can supervise here, and that was the airport manager and the airfield manager, so it just made sense to move him up. Now, I know that seems very infantile, but that's, I think, the
it's
process.
a natural fit, we understand that.
I don't think, and you could query, this meeting could go till 11 o'clock tonight, I realize, and none of us need to do that. But I think if you ask anybody here that's a tenant, if any of their services have been compromised for the decision and the staff we have, also heard Mr. Brown say the other night that he came through here and he couldn't find anybody in the building. That does happen sometimes. Lori has to go down and open up the gate for an airboat or something like that to get fuel, or there's something wrong with the pump. Mike have to go up and do something. I mean, they're all over the place, and it is a very small staff, you know. So, but all I'm hearing is negative about this airport, and our tenants and people that fly in here, there's an app that we use in flying. It's called ForeFlight. That's just one of many. But we have so many compliments on that thing, on the level of service people have experienced flying into and out of this airport. And we're just so proud, and that's why we've gotten so defensive. And I want to take this opportunity to apologize to the board. I know Mayor Karen Lake's not here. I wish I had never, because we didn't need to go sideways like this, and we've just gone off the chart in all kind of different directions. But our staff does an outstanding job with the resources they have. Thanks to the DOT, we've got new equipment that helps us mow more efficiently. For an airport this size, and I don't want to bring Mr. Prang into this or Ms. Whitney, but I think they would tell you, we keep this thing manicured. We take seriously our DOT inspections that happen every year, our environmental inspections, all of that. We get gold stars all the way, and we manage, and we have managed, and you are new.
Yeah.
And I respect the questions, I really do. And maybe we have made a mistake with this thing with Maria and all that, but you know, it's not for a lack of effort, and it's not for a love of this airport that we do what we do.
Well, like I said, there's a lot of positives, and I get all that. I'm having to address the negatives that I haven't been able to address, that you guys have all had the opportunity to defend, or to, you know, everything that's taken place in the last 2 weeks. But hang on a second, okay?
I'm sorry.
You know, again, I'm not saying that everything has lacked because of the fact, again, I think Mike's a great guy. I tremendously appreciate all of his efforts and everything, and, you know, the time he has spent with me. I'm not trying to knock that at all. The question is the fact that the delay in replacing that position is I'm not trying to call out anybody else. I'm not saying that all these tenants are having problems. My point in bringing up the tenants is that the tenants are coming to meetings because of lease agreement questions, or because because chair positions are being swapped out. I'm not hearing anybody talking at all about looking for, you know, 4 months, going into 4 months, and us not having looked for or even put out for a airfield manager. So that's where the question's at. I'm not trying to say everything is just gone to crap because, you know.
Well, can I ask what your experience is with promotions and where you've worked at? You've worked with, it's not always been Jack's Fire Rescue, right?
Yes, yeah, it's, and I worked for the Jacksonville International Airport, which.
But you worked for JAA for a while or?
Yes.
So how long did positions, I'm just speaking from your experience, how long did it take to fill a position?
It's not the same.
Promotions and stuff?
It's, as positions come open, there are windows of time and that kind of stuff.
They do interviews.
Yeah. that's
And how many
not-
firefighters?
It's not bid interviews, it's you're promoted, you make rank and you promote when those availabilities come open.
Okay, so you do it based on your training levels and all that, you get.
It's not.
Not automatic
you can't-
promotions,
It's
but-
not the same, it's not the same. Again, we.
Well, and that's the
we've known
point I
about this
wanted to make.
position Since January 23rd.
Yeah,
So-
but that's the point I wanted to make. In the Jack's Fire Rescue, how many employees are in that field?
Thousands.
Thousands.
Let's don't get sidetracked on that. Yeah, let's don't get sidetracked. Mr. Ludwig, go ahead and continue with.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. As far as that position, what is the salary of that position? Do we have, is that public at the actual salary of that position?
Sure, we can get that for you.
Okay, is that something here that anybody knows right away? And are there benefits associated with that position?
The only benefit is vacation time, personal leave, and sick leave.
Because again, I think that's something that's important, that most people would be thinking and considering. And I want to go back one more time to the statement as far as looking for the right fit. Do you look and you find the right fit and then you advertise it and then you go ahead and pick the person, but you advertise it so it looks official, but you already know who you're going to pick?
No.
Okay, but then why do we say that though? Because again, it gives off a bad impression.
Well, simply because if you were just to put it out there, we don't know who we would get applications from. And it is a unique position, and there's some skill sets that that person needs to have, as well as aviation knowledge, at least, about an airport and how it functions.
Right, and that's understandable.
Okay,
That's all I'm saying. And
so that's the right fit.
in most positions though, it is advertised, correct?
And this one will be as well.
After we find the right fit.
No.
But that's what the statement that was made. That's where I'm going at. If that's not true, then the statements like that don't need to be made because it gives a bad impression.
We're required by law to advertise this, I believe.
Yeah. And again, it's the right fit, again, is the person that has the qualifications that are listed in the job description. But more importantly, or as importantly, is that aviation experience, knowledge. I don't know that we'll ever find another Ms. Cersei. Her personality and her just interaction with our tenants. She was incredible in that.
Right,
capacity.
and I don't want to take anything from her. And again, I understand all the other, you have to have all the background. But in order to start getting people interested, or we even start looking at people, they have to know that the position's available.
Correct.
If it's not posted, then nobody knows it's available.
That's
except
correct.
for us.
And the reason it hasn't been posted is because we're in this fluid state with the city making this decision about this board. All right, what else you got?
We're going, at this point, yeah, we're going in circles, so. I want to just move over to security real quick, and I'll shorten this up because of the fact that we, I've taken up so much of the time on where that goes. The security plan, I kind of stated some things at the very beginning. I understand this is a very important document, and there are some things that I believe, though, that need to be looked at. I'm not going to go into a lot of details in here because I understand it's security and you don't do that. I do understand with security comes a lot of responsibility, and if you want to have good security, you have to have accountability. I'm very well aware of the fact of how the security works as far as for most airports. I know this was a little different. Something that I have a concern about and would like to learn more on and find out, and I may be able to address this with Mike, but maybe some people can answer this in the room tonight. Who is the overall person that's in charge of the accountability and knowing who is going in and out of this airfield at all times? There's got to be one person that does that. Is that the airfield manager's position?
Yes.
Or the airport manager's position, I'm sorry.
You probably mean say airport
Okay.
manager, yeah.
Are there forms that are given out that we keep on file for people, anyone that has access to the security area? How does that work?
Talking about access? Like access.
Because we don't just say, okay, yeah, you can go out there if you want to or whatever. There's got to be, is there an accountability system that shows that, because what we do, or the airports that I've always worked at, this is a different system, but these are cards that we are issued to get us in and out of all the security areas that we have to as far as the fire department goes. These are not taken very lightly. They know exactly who we are, and they know exactly where we go, when we go. Everything's accounted for on that. There's files on me within the Jacksonville Aviation Authority, knowing that I have been issued this and where I'm working. And then they can pull up a computer and know anywhere I've been and what I'm up to. What I'm saying is, do we have a system here, and somebody at least that is collecting information? So if we have a tenant that has to have access to that airfield because they have a hangar, are they filling out a form, any forms or anything that says this is tenant Joe Schmo, that he has permission to be on the security side, or do we have any of that, or how does that work?
I don't know that there's a form, but before you can get into any of our secured area, you have to have a code to get in, to put in on the keypad to get in.
Right. But, so there was no forms that any of the tenants?
Well, let me just say, the access is granted because an individual tenant secures a lease at the airport, okay? I didn't gain access until I was a formal tenant at the airport. Now, one thing I want to just mention, because, working at Cecil Airport for 20 years and having access to several of the airports in the Jacksonville area, so Craig, Hurlong, and Cecil, all under the JA system, along with Jackson International. But Jackson International is the only Part 139 airport in the system. But every airport in the JA system has a different access system, okay? I have access badges for both Cecil and Craig still. So it's kind of interesting.
But when they issue those badges to you, they have documentation that you have permission.
They do. That is the JA system.
Right.
And each airport has their own system. In fact, in the past, I said, well, look, I'm already in the system. Can I just get my access renewed to Craig? No, each airport does their own renewal.
I have Jackson International, I have Cecil.
Yeah.
I've been to Hurlong and spoke with the airport manager there at Hurlong.
Right.
So I understand how they all do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I was curious, do we have that system here? There's been a lot of talk with all of this going back and forth with the possible change or whatever. A lot of talk about liability. And that's where I'm going with that. And
So-
we do have our lawyer here. That's something that I wanted to kind of ask him, and hopefully he can address, is something on premises liability. If you have an opportunity, Mr. Taylor, is it Taylor?
Yes.
Yes.
But
Premises liability? Well, generally speaking, a landowner has premises liability if there is a dangerous condition on the land and somebody who's invited on the land is injured by that dangerous condition and it's not an obvious condition. That's a basic statement of premises liability.
Right.
It applies to public entities as well as private persons.
Well, and as far as from a law standpoint, and for us, your firm representing us, that accountability, is that something that you would think would be important?
Accountability for what?
Who's going in and out of the secured areas of the airfield?
I think any landowner would like to know who's on his property.
Right, so that's why I'm asking, do we have a system of accountability besides just the gate codes? Are we having people, are we documenting the fact that this person has got this access?
Well, I think what Mr. Dagenet said, obviously, if you're a tenant, then you get a code, or you provide a code you'd prefer to put into the keypad. So that's covered for every tenant. Anytime Mr. Prang has contractors out here, there's also a special code that's set up just for the contractors and crews coming in and out. So the airport manager has always kept a list of everybody that she gives a code to.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
And then, and Mike can correct me on if I'm wrong on this, but once that's over, that code gets pulled out of our system. So it's
But
no
it's not,
longer.
I think what he's looking at is there going, a running total of how many times a person comes in and out?
Our system doesn't have that
Right.
capability.
And I know it's a big difference between this system and the system here.
It is a big
What I'm saying
difference,
is
right.
there accountability, a list, and that's what you just said that, okay, because I know in this, and I can at least say this, there is an image of badges that are supposed to be issued to employees, to board members. I don't have one. I don't know if you guys have one. And that's where I'm kind of asking about, because again, we're talking about accountability and then premises liability, because some of the security stuff goes into the liability thing. And with that, if we have people that are there's been previous employees here, there's been previous board members, there's, previous tenants possibly, or it could just be people's friends, that if somebody here is knowingly allowing that or allowing access to this because we just know so-and-so, they're just, they're a good friend or whatever and all that stuff, that's where I'm concerned on a security standpoint. And then the premises liability, are we setting ourselves up? Because if good old so-and-so that we've known forever and is a great person or whatever and all that stuff gets out there and gets in an accident, and then when the law firms kick in and then they start saying, well, what were you even doing on the property in the first place? And well, so-and-so let me in. Well, who is so-and-so? Now that law firm's going after the airport, they're going after you personally or whatever. They're going to get money everywhere they can. And again, from a security standpoint, that's where I'm looking at, is having accountability so we're not setting ourselves up for liability. That makes sense.
Well, I'm
Makes
just going to
sense.
say, it sounds like you've got, I understand all your questions. I do. But I'm going to say that this airport is a general aviation airport. Doesn't have the same badging system that the JA system has.
And I completely understand.
And I don't think it really needs it, the same type of system.
And I'm not vying for that. I'm not pushing
But
that.
it sounds like, I understand your questions, and it probably bears more investigation.
Right.
To gain better understanding.
Because that's my concern. It's being able to have accountability for the system that we do have. I understand this is a whole different, it's a whole different setup. I completely understand that.
Yeah.
I know there's been issues with gates. And again, my concern is people being able to still access the airfield. We've had, in my situation, the current airport that I'm at right now, throughout the years, we've had multiple people, just for whatever reason, they were drunk, they were messed up on drugs, drive-through gates onto the airfield.
Oh, I know,
Okay?
yeah.
If we have a situation, we can help, we can't prevent that, but what we can help is if we have gates that are open or gates that are broken or stuck in an open position or not being monitored, that's where we have to step up and be able to
Sure.
to do what we can for the accountability side of it, and that's where I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Knowing who is coming in and out of here, who's been issued the right to be able to come into the secured area, ensuring that, the gates are being monitored, however, that we don't have just anybody and everybody that can come through, and trying to set ourselves up so we're not in a liability situation, that we can potentially prevent. So that's where I'm kind of going with that. So I just wanted to address a few of those, and just say, how do we enforce? That's my final question. How do we enforce that? If we find somebody here that's not supposed to be here, what do we do? Who are we reporting that to? And how do we do that if it's somebody that's like, oh, we know them, they're good to go? Does anybody have an answer for that? Like, how do we enforce that?
Local law enforcement.
Non-emergency number, we trespass people that are not supposed to be here.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just for clarification, Mr. Ludwig, and I know you can't divulge a lot because of the security plan, that's just a state law issue. You mentioned about badges for employees and board members. Was that something that they recommend or they require, or?
You talking about as far as our security plan?
No, well,
Security
You
plan
can, well, it
has,
sounded like we referred to where you currently work at.
not,
no. This is for here.
Yeah. I read the TSA guidelines. I don't know if you've ever read them or not, but I've read the TSA guidelines. And what they're talking about is an SIDA, which is a secure
Yeah, it's, and that.
identification. And that's what it's talking about in there, I bet.
But
This is a little different inside of this.
Let me have Mr. Prang address that, because I think what we're going to find is at different levels of airport, whether it's a general aviation.
You do not have a SIDA area here.
Right.
At all. That's Part 139 commercial airports.
Right.
In fact, this airport, by TSA standards, would have the lowest level of security
Right.
requirement. In fact, notwithstanding that some of Mr. Ludwig's ideas sound great, when we designed the most recent security project, we designed what you could afford with the money that was available from the state. So you don't have a system that has proximity readers. You don't have a system that where each tenant has their own unique code. The gates don't talk back to any centralized system. 2 reasons. We couldn't afford it. They're not required to have it. It's the second reason. So because there hasn't been a history of trespassing, vandalism problems, it didn't make sense at the time for the airport to spend its own money on an upgraded system level when it wasn't required. And I believe it's still not required. You don't have any charter operators. You have no jet charter operators.
Yeah.
The things that, the parts of an FAA requirement that would kick in a higher level of security, you don't have. And I'll just say this too, there's other airports just like you that open their front gate in the morning and it stays open all day.
Yeah.
And they close it at night. And that's a perfectly fine way to operate as long as you know who's coming and going and the tenants have an awareness of see something, say something. So like you actually operate at a slightly higher level than some other general aviation airports in the same region of Florida.
Well, and
It's just
again,
different, you know, you're not in an urban environment too, which I think changes things. The number of people who wander down this road is probably very low. Not many people wander down a dead-end road.
yeah, with
unless they
kids,
know they're
kids
coming
out on
here.
a Friday night or Saturday night, coming, hey, let's go drive around the airfield. Okay, and it could be, and I understand what you're saying as far as that goes, and I know this is totally different than side of thing. And that's what I was just explaining to Rex, so that's not, it's not the same, and I understand that it's not the same. And I know I'm not even pushing for the system that I'm talking about that I'm familiar with. My thing is being able to have accountability for the system that we do have. And as far as for the construction thing, and that was something I was going to ask, but, you know, as far as your guys, when they come in or any other contractor, are they required, and this is where it goes back to premises liability, because you're going into a secure area, no matter what, that's still a secure area. Are they required to stay there and make sure that that gate closes behind them? Because again, that's something that's heavily enforced on any airfield. Or do you post a person there at that gate that's making sure your guys are coming and going, and that gate's not just sitting there wide open? And that's where I'm asking, is that okay? Is that okay from a lawyer point of view? On a secure, going for a secure airfield that's, you know, follows FAA, you know, and the Florida Department of Transportation, is that okay to be doing that? That's what I'm asking.
I believe there's signage on our gates that ask those that are entering or exiting to wait until that gate closes completely.
What's the thing I'm
behind them.
asking versus are they doing it, you know, or they just drive on through
I
because
think
they got
it's on
business?
the gate sign, it's meant to be a courtesy, it's not required for the level of security that you need at this airport. You could certainly add it as your own local rule, that tenants must stop and wait, but that's really only applicable where you have controlled gates and you're avoiding piggybacking one person, one gate operation.
Right.
That's not true here.
Right, well, then it's like, why don't we take all of the lock, you know, all the gates and just leave them open? And that's kind of where I'm going. I know I'm not trying, I know that's sarcastic response, but I'm just saying, if it's okay for one gate, then why don't we just do it for all of the gates?
Here's
you know?
another thing that has occurred with our electric gates. If we have an electrical storm, the gates have gotten hit at night, and I don't know why. Maybe it's a safety measure from the manufacturer, but the gate opens because it's got a battery backup and it stays open. Now, when we're doing
That's an
construction,
industry problem.
yeah,
Gates,
I mean, we work on the gates a lot, or Mike
it
does.
happens all over the state where gates fail.
It happens at Keystone.
Right,
do that.
and you know what we
and then
do,
if
we
you've
have to
got
have
construction traffic,
you know, or at least they're supposed to be.
if you've got construction traffic, the other thing that we do is some days we do open the gate, and there's a sign there that clearly says airport operations area. Violators will be prosecuted, you know, off limits. But if you every time a dump truck comes out of here the last few days, it'll wear that gate out in a week. So we open it up. But again, we got eyes all around. Grant's down there with, instruction. We got mechanics. We get calls, or I believe Mike will tell you, he's gotten calls, hey, there's a strange vehicle down here, or
And again, my whole point is, from a lawyer standpoint, and I'm not, is that okay for a law firm that's representing this airport, knowing that that's just how it goes, and it's just, if something happens, if there's an incident, somebody gets out there on that secure side that's not supposed to be there, runs into something, or there's an whatever, and they decide they want to sue the airport, that's where I'm asking about that.
I'm not sure what your question is to me.
Partial security versus full security. Liability standpoint.
Given what I understand to be the history of this airport, it seems like what they've done has been satisfactory. I've been representing the airport for more than 20 years. I've never been contacted about the airport having premises liability to anybody.
Okay then. And last thing, as far as the badging goes, and you're asking me about that here in Ordnance Airport, says identification badges will be issued upon hiring, appointment, or signing of lease and retrieved upon termination. Badges should be displayed at all times when on airport property. Transient aircraft personnel will be monitored as needed by airport personnel. Now, there's several other things that go on about that as well, but I'm just saying, again, this is a concern that I had, that I would have liked to have been able to address this if I would have known that we were going to be, having this. So, and this is an image of the badge itself. I think I can show that. So,
one thing, and I did want to mention that he's right on one thing. When you said, when I first brought my airplane here, we had a card reader on the gate back there. I don't know if any of y'all, if David Nichols was still here, he'd remember. You had to lay it up there on it. That way you couldn't give out your PIN to anybody. But when it failed, I think that's when they replaced them with the keypads. But we did used to have that.
So
whether some people hung them around their neck or not, I don't know. But
So, but I think he's more
he's talking about
concerned
a ramp, somebody walking around the ramp.
well, that, but also just the access part of it. So that's why I was asking, is that something that they stipulate as being recommended or required?
I mean, it specifically states in there talking about the access, that you have a secure side and the security side, and then the street side is the unsecure side.
Okay, so
and only, what it basically says in there, the people that are allowed on the secure side would be airport employees, board members, first responders, and obviously pilots and people that are associated with the
Or
pilots that are
tenants.
transit.
Tenants, right.
That's what I mean, yeah. The tenants I think I included that.
Kind of sounds to me like that document may need to be reviewed for relevancy.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying and
Is that the one that was just submitted?
yeah, I believe so.
So again, back to the question, is that a recommendation or a requirement? Because we do have security. I mean, to get into the secure side, you've got to have a PIN number to get into the keypad.
Right. If you go through one of the keypad gates, if that gate is open, then that keypad doesn't do any good at that point. If there's other gates around the airfield that are open and in an open position, it's the same thing. That's all I'm saying, is that there's security,
Gates are not generally held in the open position, though. I know from time to time, as Scott mentioned,
That's a temporary
if
measure.
we have a heavy trucking day for construction, we're saving wear and tear on the gate by holding it open.
right. And I understand that, but generally from the airports that I'm familiar with, somebody's posted at that gate from either the construction company.
And a lot of times they
personnel,
do, they have a guy
Monitoring
back.
access.
Yeah,
So that way somebody's there that are staying right there, so.
Cameras out too?
yeah, we've got cameras all over the
Yeah,
place.
but-
Perimeter gates.
That's all I'm saying, is there accountability as far as,
Cameras are, I have no idea.
so, but that's what I'm asking about. Is the liability standpoint, If people, that anybody can just access out there that doesn't belong out there.
No, not just anybody can.
Well, I mean, but if they do, we're not here all the time to know that they are, so that's all I'm saying.
I will tell you one, and I think it's kind of humorous real quick. I fly in a Cedar Key airport, and so they don't have gasoline for sale, they don't have an office, but they are in compliance. And Bobby, they've got a fence, and I kid you not, it could not be higher. It's probably a 42-inch fence. And what's funny is they've got a half gate on it. They've got a doorknob with a keypad, and you can reach in and grab the handle and open the gate and walk right on the field.
Right.
I mean, it's ridiculous, but they're in compliance apparently. I mean, they are in compliance, but that's all they have.
Okay.
It's a joke, really.
And again, my biggest thing was I wanted to understand from the law firm that's representing us that they're okay with that. And he says from his experience, there's not been any issues, so I can't ask for anything more than that, so. It just felt like something that needs to be addressed under a security thing. What if? And if you guys are okay with it, then that's what I needed to get out of you there, so.
Well,
Let me say, I don't want to mislead you. I've never been asked to involve myself in matters concerning the security of the airport. I'm doing things that I didn't know. So I've never been involved, I've been asked, and I don't feel like I needed to be asked. I'm not a security expert, I'm a lawyer. And if it comes to my attention, if this airport is in compliance with whatever FAA or other regulations apply to this airport, then generally I'd be satisfied. And it is important to me that I do know from having, the honor to represent this airport for a long, long time now, there has never come to my attention any issue of anybody on this airport having been harmed in any way in such a way that there was some insinuation that the airport should be responsible. It's never come to my attention, and to my knowledge, it's never happened. So as a lawyer, when that kind of history is available, it's relevant. It suggests to me that whatever they're doing is satisfactory. And if we are in compliance with legal requirements and regulatory requirements that pertain to security of this airport in its circumstances, then am I satisfied? Yeah, I am.
Well, again, my point was, I understand if it's not happened in the past or if there's not been an incident, that's great. That's what you want to hear. But my question is, and again, as a security, having to look at security, is you have to what if, just like my job as a fireman. We're there because of what if, and we're there to cover whatever we have, whether we ever have it or not. It's a what if thing. And that's, again, how I'm trying to address the security issue.
And I think I think it's great that we be proactive in this, because if there's some areas where we need to fix something or add some additional layers, by all means, we need to address that, look into it, and do what we're required to do. So I appreciate all your comments tonight. I really do. I think there's some things, I've made some notes here that we need to look into. And here's the reality again, welcome to Florida and Sunshine Law. This is the only way we can do it.
Right.
So thank you, Mr. Ludwig. I appreciate your input tonight.
I appreciate everyone's time. So I appreciate it. I had a lot of catching up to do. So.
That's okay. That's okay. It's good to have Chief Griffiths with us tonight. She is taking the place of Colonel Allen tonight, at least. And she's going to bring us up to date with some things that Colonel Allen had submitted, and she's the messenger.
Good evening, Mr.
Good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. So on behalf of Colonel Allen, May is going to be extremely busy. We're actually going to be busy through July. It's what we call our annual training period, where the entire Florida Guard will be there at some point training. So just for and as well as other non-DOD Department of Defense organizations and non-Florida Army National Guard, such as the Marine Corps and the Army Reserve. So just for May, it's going to be over 7,400 personnel on ground. There will be some I'm not going to brief, each and every bullet, but just the main highlights. There will be some that I'm not really sure like what you want to know from us, because this is my first meeting, but I would assume it would be anything that would potentially affect the airspace.
One of the things that typically we like to know, and Chief Denny was here, he was with range control because of the restricted airspace that's over Camp Landing, which affects all the pilots,
Right.
depending on whether it's hot or cold, meaning they can fly through it or can't fly through it. So it's always good to kind of have some information about when that range is going to be hot and just to
Absolutely.
expect that, because we do share that. Mr. Fryer's been good about sharing that. Anytime you're doing artillery firing, the sounds of freedom, Mr. Fryer's been good about taking that information and putting it on the local Crystal Lake home sites Facebook page, so everybody, when they start hearing things, they're aware of it. So it's always great information that we get from Blanding, and then we share that with the community as well.
And we do have some artillery units that are going to be sending off artillery rounds in June. So if you need any specifics on that, just let me know and I will follow up with Colonel Allen and get you that information.
Don't you typically provide
Yeah, I'll put it on like
specific
Keystone word
days
of
that?
mouth and stuff
Yeah.
like that, because amazingly, there's people that have either just moved into these local communities and they don't know what it is, and now their windows are rattling and they're hearing these noises.
I get called
So
all
it's
the
kind of
time.
nice to tell the public. And I believe you have somebody
Yeah.
in post that does that as well. So yeah, we do, I try to keep up with that.
So those specific dates would be informative for us, and then we can, like I say, disperse that to the community as well.
Absolutely.
Okay?
So pending your questions, I have nothing further.
The, one question about the annual hurricane exercise with Florida Department of Emergency Management. I know there's going to be some training over in Lake City for some hurricane. Is that completely separate? This is just military?
Specific to our hurricane response.
Okay,
For the National Guard.
okay. All right, so that's going to be separate.
Yeah.
All right,
But there may be some aircraft flying around as a result of that. So I'm assuming maybe that's why he put that bullet on there.
okay. What's the increase in installation usage by Space Florida in support of fuel boosters? What's that all about?
So are you familiar with Space Florida on Camp Landing?
Yep.
So they store these rocket motors, and their requirement has increased.
Okay.
So they're actually building a new storage facility out there just to store. So that means there's going to be more rockets coming in than before. They are constructing a new roadway because of the increase. But I don't really think that's going to affect you at all. But if you have any specific questions.
I don't think so. I am curious about Keymore's expansion to the south. Is that going to come down all the way to 21 or across 21?
Can I get back with you on that?
Okay,
Yeah, I'll ask Colonel Allen the specifics of that.
that's, would have an impact locally. So just curious. All right, anything else?
I have nothing. To say. Thank you.
All right, thank you again for coming tonight.
I guess I need to clarify because you said that, we need to be appointed. So the intent is because we're not, depending on the mission, the same individual may not be able to make it to every meeting. So we were going to rotate like 5 individuals. Is that possible?
That would be a charter amendment, because the charter seat specifically states from a representative from National Guard or be appointed as you rotate through, but it would be because it is a voting member. So that would be something that would have to be handled with Camp Landing, and then as needed can be reappointed. It's cumbersome, but it is something that would have to be handled through the charter.
I know when I first started on the board in '09, it was typically the post commander that was the representative. And I know with the expansion of their responsibilities, they delegated that to someone else. And It always went through the city, and it was one person, but yes, that's going to have to be addressed.
As needs, that's going to have to be something that will be handled, and it is something that's stated on our chart, within our charter, so that would be handled that way.
Perhaps you could talk with Colonel Allen about one person.
One person, sure.
Explaining the issue with the charter, the way it's set up there and the requirement. And then perhaps Camp Landing can have a permanent person.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. All right, Mr. Seamer.
Mine's going to be real quick, since it's, I don't know what time. I did get a hold of a Mr. Satner because Maria had sent, his number, and I got in touch with him. And he is very interested in it. He does want me to do like a little survey of how many palmetto bushes I actually see that are here since we had the clearing and all that done. He said they probably wouldn't be harvested until September. But he was talking about somewhere in the neighborhood that their averaging our profit from it would be about $100 an acre. So depending on how many acres we have and how thick of a harvest it is. But he said that the berries are going to be very expensive this year.
Wow. So for our guests, Camp Landing for the last, I don't know, at least 5 years, Paul Catlett, who oversees all the natural resources there, they have companies come in and actually bid to come in and pick their palmetto berries. It's been a huge resource of revenue for them. And so we had contacted Paul Catlett, he'd given us some names, and this gentleman has gotten back to Maria and she sent it to Mr. Seamer. So it's something that we've wanted to look at, because while we were doing some clearing, as the timber guys were clearing, they were running over palmettos and there just was damage. So it wasn't going to be a good thing to do for a year or so. And so now we're back up to that point. So we'll find out.
Yeah, he just wants me to do like a survey, and I asked Miss Miller how since she's mowing out here all the time, what she had saw, especially back over here where the old Florida Trail was, because that would be a fine place to harvest, and we wouldn't have to worry about them coming back and messing on the secure side area of the airfield. So I'm gonna bring my side-by-side out, and I can get around and look at that.
Sounds good.
The 700 acres of trees, that, the reason I said I read the TSA was because I was trying to figure out, after Mr. Fryer brought it up that you're not allowed to carry a firearm inside, but we had a turkey hunt. And I know that they didn't use dart guns. They used a shotgun or whatever. So that was in kind of violation of what Mr. Fryer had said, that you're not allowed to have it in there. And I actually saw that the chairman of the